The honourable member from Langley-Aldergrove.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the honourable member from Sarnia-Lambton and for her hard work and the presentation, the speech that she just made. I think she addressed a lot of important issues, Madam Speaker. I also want to recognize the good work for the critic and the good work that he's doing on this file. I think if Canadians listen carefully to this debate, they are going to really hear the root of the problem, and that is that the political games that are being played by the government and not being straight and transparent. It's a lot of photo ops and a lot of half information that is being shared. The motion that we're debating today is the Liberal motion on fighting ISIS, and they said that they were going to expand by advise and assist mission for the Canadian Forces, by enhancing capacity building efforts with our defense partners in Jordan and Lebanon, and withdrawing our CF-18s. Now, how do you expand by withdraw? Well, only that's a Liberal concept, that you expand by withdrawing. And Madam Speaker, it doesn't make sense. And the Griffin helicopters that they've said that they're going to send in, they're going to send in Griffin helicopters. Are they going to be armed? Are they going to be able to defend themselves against attack? And they won't answer that. Why won't they answer those important questions? And it's sort of a smoke and mirrors that we're getting, and why would they not be honest and transparent and inform Canadians what truly their plan is about? When you don't answer questions, straightforward questions, you ask why? What are they hiding? Why aren't they being honest with Canadians? Madam Speaker, I come from a family where my father was a Canadian veteran. He was in the Army. And when I first was elected in 2004, I was given the great honor of actually joining a Canadian military for a short period of time to experience what it was like to be in the Canadian military. And my father, being in the Army, he was in tanks in the First World War, Second World War. That's where I went first, and I loved my time and the experience in the Army. Then the second experience was the Navy. And I've had the great honor of working with a number of veterans and actually active reserves and full-time military people. And I am so proud and so thankful for the Canadians that make that sacrifice of serving Canada. And their heart is so big that they're there to represent Canada with great pride. And they're also there to help those in the world, help those that are being attacked. And this is a very serious issue that we're dealing with. The member from Sarnia-Lambton highlighted the First World War and the Second World War, how Canada had a reputation of carrying far beyond its weight. And then we look back not that long ago when there was a Liberal government, and that was described by the military as the decade of darkness. And it was a sad time. When we became, and I was elected in 2004, we found Canadian military in Afghanistan with the wrong color of uniform, poorly equipped, and they were put in the hottest part of Afghanistan, where they were at the greatest of risk, and poorly equipped. And that changed in 2006 when we became government. And the pride of our Canadian military and the thankfulness, and every Friday people would wear red, at least in our party, and just as a show of thanks to our Canadian military. And the number of people coming out at Remembrance Day, and it continued to grow and grow, and just a pride and a thankfulness that we shared with our Canadian military. And in the evil, a pure evil that we saw in ISIS, exposed its ugly head. I think back to why are we in this with our allies? And nobody wants to be in war. There was a Islamic radical terrorist murderous group called ISIS that started doing horrific things. And we got to think back to what was it like that caused our allies, the world, to say this has to stop. Well, ISIS forces cut off and surrounded thousands of civilians at Mount Sinjar in northern Iraq. At least 500 men were slaughtered execution style, with an unknown number of women being captured and sold into slavery. At least 70 children were reported to have died from thirst, and at least 50 elderly perished. Then we were horrified when hostages in green jumpsuits were paraded helplessly in front of a camera and beheaded slowly. Many of the victims were humanitarian aid workers. Then we saw children being crucified brutally. They were buried alive, and many were sold into sexual slavery. We saw Coptic Christians being beheaded because of their faith. We saw ISIS round up 45 civilians in a town, some thought to be Iraqi security forces, and their families, and they were burned alive. ISIS released horrific video showing a captured Jordanian pilot standing in a cage, doused with gasoline, eventually set on fire, and then being crushed by giant rocks. And we saw ISIS take some 400 male prisoners out into the desert and a mass execution. And we saw 4 Iraqi children under the age of 15 beheaded because they refused to convert from Christianity to Islam. We saw in northern Iraq 3,500 captured women sold into sex slavery, tortured, and repeatedly raped. And on and on and on it goes. Mr. Speaker, the world said this is wrong. We need to stand against this true, pure evil. And so the world did come together. And again, Canada carried well above its weight. And what did we do? Well, we were involved with almost 250 bombings in doing our part. 249 ISIS fighting positions were destroyed by Canadian jets. 83 ISIS equipment and vehicles were destroyed by Canadian jets. 24 ISIS IEDs, improvised explosion devices, in factories and storage facilities were destroyed by Canadian jets. And we know recently when Canadian troops were out there training and there was an attack by ISIS forces, Canadian jets were called for backup, and ISIS was attacked and pushed back. It is a strong legacy, a strong history of Canada doing its part. And Mr. Speaker, what is the plan? The plan is to end the Canadian jets. I think you would get support if, from this side, from the Conservative side, if we continued to do our part. And so some of the suggestions of what the government wants to do, Mr. Speaker, it has merit. But when the decisions are based in clouds of secrecy, confusion, mixed messages, not clearly sharing what their plan is, and they're removing one of the biggest impacts that Canada's had with its allies, removing the jets. And why are they doing that? Because during the rhetoric of an election not that long ago, they promised they would remove that. Following that, there was the attacks in Paris. And the shift came in the public, saying that was a wrong, we do not want to hold the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, to that promise because it was said in haste. It wasn't thought out. And so Canadians said, it's okay, we should be leaving the jets. Why are we bringing back the jets when they're so effective? And the allies are asking us to continue to participate. It was not that long ago, we had a conference of our allies here in Canada saying, how can we continue to fight against ISIS effectively? Canada was not even invited to that. Why? Because we're backing away and we have a plan that's cloaked in secrecy. Madam Speaker, we asked the government to do the right thing, to reconsider, to leave our Canadian CF-18s involved with this fight, do the right thing, do our part as Canadians so we can be standing proud and free as Canadians. Thank you.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Kootenay, No, sorry. Kingston? Oh, it's the next one. Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for his comments and his speech today. And we've heard a number of times, I think, from both opposition parties today about some kind of lack of transparency with respect to our party's position during the election as to what we were planning on doing. And some discussion, and in particular a little while earlier from the NDP, about not being clear as to what we were doing. I will direct the members opposite their attention to the Liberal Party's website, very easy to find, liberal.ca. It's still on there right now, and the wording is very clear. It says we will refocus Canada's military contribution in the region on the training of local forces while providing more humanitarian support and immediately welcoming 25,000 more Syrian refugees. We are doing exactly what we committed to. My question is removing the jets, in the member opposite's opinion, the only constructive way that we can contribute? Are we not also contributing with these forces that we will be using for humanitarian perspective? Do you not see any value in what they're contributing?
The honourable member from Langley-Aldergrove.
Well, Madam Speaker, I thank the member for the question, and what he said is what the Liberal Party said during the election is what we will do. Regardless of what is happening in the world, we are going to stay focused on what we said during the election. But the world has changed since then. And for us to say we're going to remove our planes because that's what we said during the rhetoric of an election, and we are going to put more Canadians at risk, and we're going to rely on somebody else to protect Canadian soldiers. And it makes no sense. Why would you do that? And it's the wrong thing to do, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for his comments, but especially for drawing attention again to the fact that on this side of the House, we certainly value the work that our women and men in uniform do for us each and every day. And we certainly want them to have all the resources at their disposal to help them to do their job, and more importantly, to return back to their families healthy. But, Madam Speaker, there's one issue that I think we're losing sight of, and that is this concept of all of the refugees that we're welcoming. And certainly we want to welcome refugees to our country and help them get settled into permanent housing situations. But many times when we speak to the refugees who are arriving here, they would far rather have us redouble our efforts at creating a secure and safe environment for them so that they're able to maintain their homes in the places that they're comfortable in their homeland, rather than being taken to a country that is maybe difficult to live in terms of climate and many cultural adjustments that they need to make. So, Madam Speaker, I just wondered if my colleague would comment on the importance of us doing all that we can, including maintaining our CF-18s in the fight, so that we can create a more stable environment for our colleagues who are from this part of this troubled part of the world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member from Langley-Aldergrove.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That Langley-Aldergrove has a beautiful sound to it. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member for what he shared. And absolutely, my parents, my grandparents came from Ukraine, and I love to go back and visit. But Ukraine is still a very unstable area in the world. And they would not have left Ukraine if it would not have been for the issues in the late 1800s. And people were leaving Ukraine. And people that are Syrian and Iraqi, they love their country. Their memories are dear and sweet, but then also there's memories that are horrific. And they would like to stay if they could stay. And so if we can push back the evil and join our allies and carry above our weight, as we always have, then people that have Syria as their home, where they grew up, where those memories are, I'm sure they would want to stay. And the member is quite right. And that'll only happen if we continue to carry above our weight. If we start backing off and playing politics with this issue, Madam Speaker, they will not be able to go back. Thank you.